I just wanted to say good morning to everybody. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm president of the Trust Company of Tennessee. But most importantly, right now, I'm chairman of the Knoxville Chamber Board of Directors. And I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning and for your commitment to the Chamber's mission of driving regional economic prosperity. So, as premier partners, your investment makes it possible for the Chamber team to execute that mission each day. And we're grateful for your support. And normally we would be standing around a room drinking a cup of coffee and eating donuts and getting caught up on what's happening with the chamber and all the good things that are going on. But since we're not able to be together doing that, I just want to give you kind of a quick update. The chamber team has done a phenomenal job during this tumultuous 2020. They've stayed very focused, been out meeting with people, socially distanced and masked up, but still out doing the job, meeting and gathering information to try and help move our region forward. And as part of that mission of the Chamber of the Path to Prosperity, the Chamber's 5-year strategic vision prioritizing the creation of a regional workforce development strategy that prepares students for current and future career opportunities. But before we get started, I want to thank all the elected officials who have joined us this morning. We appreciate your dedication to ensuring the students are prepared for the workforce. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from former Governor Bill Haslam, who focused on student achievement throughout his tenure as mayor of Knoxville and as governor of Tennessee, and now as a private citizen. During his 2 terms as governor, Tennessee students were the fastest improving in the country in academic achievement, and high school graduation rates reached all-time highs. Tennessee became the first state in the nation to offer 2 years of free technical or community college to high school graduates and adults who had not completed their degrees. Approximately 450,000 private sector jobs were created during his time in office, and Tennessee's unemployment rate reached the lowest level recorded in state history. Since leaving office, former Governor Haslam has returned to the private sector and continues to be engaged on many local and national issues. He is currently chair of Young Life Board of Trustees and serves on the National Board of Directors for Teach for America. He was also a lecturer at Vanderbilt University during the fall of 2019. Former Governor Haslam and his wife, Chrissy, have been married for 38 years and are blessed with 3 children and 10 grandchildren. That's quite an accomplishment, 38 years. Good job. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Amy Nolan and the Chamber's Vice President of Regional Enhancement, who will facilitate today's discussion. Amy?
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you all for being with us this morning. I've got some questions prepared for the governor, but as questions come to your mind, please drop those into the chat. And when we finish this first part, Lindsay will then moderate. Lindsay Wilson, our team, will moderate a question and answer. Governor, you began sounding the alarm back in May about the impact of COVID-19 on students when schools, at least locally, abruptly shut down, and you've continued to raise awareness. It's still early, but what do we know so far about the pandemic's impact on learning, and how could that impact our economic future?
Well, thanks, Amy, and thanks for everybody joining. It's fun to see everybody remotely. I'm like all of you. I miss seeing people that I love having the chance to work with, but it's encouraging to see so many people still hanging in. Let me just start with this. We have a slide up there that I'll come to in just a minute, but this is a difficult time period, right? We're worried about the health of our loved ones. Many of us know somebody who's either definitely been sick. Some have been, badly sick, and some who have lost their lives. We're worried about local businesses and the impact. There's so many things that we're worried about. What I would love to encourage all of us is to not lose sight in the midst of that, of the economic impact of the loss of learning and the social impact of that. I'd love for this group to try to keep that top of mind. And with all the discussions about mask and no mask, et cetera, one of the things I've always said is, what do we do so that we can keep our kids in real school as much as possible? Because we know that while virtual school is a necessity in some situations, we're better off when students are in in school in person. And so that's kind of driven every discussion I've been a part of, and is the kind of political divides about masks and how we react to it is, what do we do so that our kids can be in school? I say that because we know there's economic impact from missing school. The slide in front of you talks about this is a national slide, but that's in billions of just the impact so far of the school that we've missed because of COVID. And you can see that's in annualized earnings loss. Lifetime learning, if you think of it this way, every year of school is worth about 5% of your total lifetime earnings. And if you miss a year of school one way or the other in terms of the educational gains you make, you're going to the average person over their lifetime will make 5% less, which is a lot of money over your entire life. It's a lot of impact on the economy of the country. And you see, unsurprisingly, like other situations, the economic disparity falls harder on our people of color and low income families. So that's why it's so important that we not miss this moment and that we keep top of mind awareness. Again, with all the political divide that we know on all issues, but particularly on this one, what I'd like to propose is let's push the priority of education to the front, and let's make all decisions, or as many decisions as we can, with that in mind.
Yeah. Governor Lee has already said the results of standardized testing should not impact teachers' evaluations this year. Still, there are a lot of others that are pushing to get rid of them altogether. What are your thoughts on testing this year?
You know, I have unsurprisingly, some strong feelings on this issue. I think it's really important. Daniel's overly generous introduction of me talked about Tennessee's progress in education. I want to be really clear. That progress was a result of some things that happened while we were there, but some things that happened before we were there. It's truly kind of a bipartisan result of Tennessee deciding to do three things. And I mean that in the best sense. Governor Bredesen and a lot of others got things started. We finished up. The legislature played a big role in that. But it's really three things. It was one, saying we're going to raise our standards, our expectations of what we expect out of our kids in Tennessee. Before, I've always said it was like we set the basketball goal at 8 feet and then told our parents, hey, all your kids can dunk the basketball. Well, if you lower the goal enough, anybody can dunk it. You know, I still can at my age. Okay, but we weren't setting realistic standards. And so we raised the standards, what we expected kids to know along the way. Number two, we put in place year-end assessments to measure what students learn. We've had some difficulties with that. While we were in office, the testing didn't always work the way it would like. But that doesn't change the fact that we need to have some way to keep score on what we're learning. We put a lot of money into public education, rightfully so. But we need to have the way to say, are we learning something? The analogy I always use is, I'm a runner and I keep a watch and I time myself running. Now, if you ask me, I'd say I still run as hard and fast as I did when I was 50. I'm in my 60s now, but I don't. My watch tells me that's not true. My watch tells me I have slowed down considerably, mainly to a fast walk almost these days. But without that watch, I would think I was still running as fast as I used to. We get an assessment to see how we're doing. You go to your doctor to get a physical, and he or she measures lots of things to say, here's how you're doing. We need to do that even in this extraordinary year. There's no question this is impacted. It would not be fair to teachers to actually have their evaluation in what they make be based on students' progress this year. I believe that should be a part in normal years, but this is not a normal year. So I feel strongly we need to have the year-end assessment now more than ever. We, as a society, we need to understand the impact of this year. I know there's a lot of people that said, well, if it doesn't count toward teachers' evaluations or students' grades, students won't try. It's been such an abnormal year. Why are we going to take precious classroom time to assess where our students are? But I actually think this might be the most important year to do that so that we can come up with a remedy. We know the patient has been has had a rough year. We know that, and so, but we need to do a physical to see exactly where that is, so that whether it's the state legislature, the local school board, county commission, whoever, we can have a plan that starts to make up for the gap that we know exists.
Yeah. Even before the pandemic hit, we've seen evidence, at least in ACT scores, that some of the academic gains are slowing. ACT scores dropped across the state um, for the second consecutive year. Um, do you agree that we've maybe lost sight of the ball, rested on our laurels as far as academic performance?
Well, yeah, and I want to be real clear. This is not because the new administration has a different view. Than this is not about, oh, we did better when the Haslam team was there than we do now. That's not it. I think a couple of things. I think, Amy, your words are right. We've taken our eye off the ball a little. Those things that made us successful, we've decided may not be so important. So having that year-end assessment and measuring what students are learning. And I think eventually when we get past the pandemic, going back to where evaluations are tied to what students learn, that because we've had some difficulty in the testing process, again, some of that under our time, to be blunt, people have, said, I don't know if I think testing is important. People are not, everybody from the teachers associations to some other groups don't like the tie between the evaluations and student outcomes. Here's the main point that I would want to make. When you're watching a school board meeting here or anywhere else, a county commission meeting, a state, whatever, if the primary conversation is not about student outcomes, if we have to talk about a lot of other things, but the primary discussion should be about student outcomes. If it's not, you should have warning bells going off about that conversation. And my concern is that around the state, this isn't just a Knox County conversation, but that when you listen in on school board meetings and education committee meetings, the conversations are about a lot of other things besides, are our students learning what they need to learn? And so I hope every conversation that you're a part of, and that when you're talking about, like I said, whether it's a school board issue, legislature, whatever, it's about, well, all that's fine, but are our students learning more? And are the outcomes better? Because all of this stuff really matters. Over a period of time, Tennessee has changed its reputation. And I think a lot of that is because of the education gains we made. And the example I give all the time is, in the old days, companies trusted us to build their cars. So we have lots of manufacturing around Tennessee. They didn't trust us to do the R&D, but that's changed. We now have companies, world-class companies putting their research and development facilities in Tennessee. And so we can probably go on being a state where people make things, and that's really good. But we also want to be the place where people trust us to design and do the research and bring in the technical jobs that we know are going to dominate the economy.
Okay. Speaking of, you and your wonderful wife, Chrissy, have joined with other leaders across the state to launch an organization called Better Student Outcomes Now. What do you hope that organization will accomplish?
Well, I think a little of what I was just talking about. I want every education conversation to ultimately be about student outcomes. And I think one of the encouraging things, we've had this debate going on about education, and from people all over the political spectrum, by the way, that, sometimes people on the far right and the far left end up kind of joining and being on the same side in some of these conversations. But what we want the conversations to be about are how are the student outcomes? And encouragingly, you're seeing parent-led groups across the state saying, I don't think we're talking about the right things when it comes to education. And interestingly, in some of our lowest income areas, we're seeing parent-led groups who have come together and said, we want to be a part of this conversation. With all the educations, we're really concerned about what's happening in our neighborhood with our children. And let's make certain that we're saying that no matter where you live, no matter what your race, gender, background, anything is, that you have a chance to have your your child have better outcomes than they've had in the past. And this group is literally about doing that.
Okay. You and Chrissy also, as this kind of learning loss became evident in the spring, you two started kind of a tutoring corps of college students that would work over the summer to tutor children. You characterized it as experimental. What did you learn from that? And is that a model you think we should continue to pursue?
Yeah, it was actually really encouraging. This is one of those things that everybody was scrambling around when school all of our schools had to close last year in the spring. Everybody was scrambling saying, what are we going to do? And somebody came to us saying, you have two needs that maybe you could marry. You have students who have lost a lot of the chance to be in classrooms, and you have all these college students who thought they were going to be doing something else for the summer. They thought they would have an internship, or they would go on a study abroad or something. And all that changed because of the pandemic. And somebody said, why don't you marry the two? Go to those college students and pay them to tutor, and then bring in some students that we know will suffer some learning loss, and put the two together. And so we went to Boys and Girls Club, because they have facilities all across the state, and said, would you facilitate this even in the middle of a pandemic? And our goal was to try to hire 1,000 college students who would teach for 7 weeks, about 10 to 12 hours a week. So 3 to 4 days a week, 3 or 4 hours a day, to have a small group of 2 or 3 kids. Here's the results. And by the way, like I said, we borrowed the idea from somebody else and put it together. In those 7 weeks, our average student gained 1/3 of a school year's learning. Okay, so which is not bad for 7 weeks of 10 to 12 hours a week. So for basically 70 hours of learning, they gained 1/3 of a school year's results. And so if you think about it, we paid those tutors $1,000 divided by 3. They typically had about 3 students. For $333, a student made 1/3 of a year's progress. So we're excited about it. We're planning to continue it next summer. On the national front, I think the Biden administration is looking at some national programs along those lines, and we're having some early conversations with them. So I think there's a model there that can help catch up. And while it's expensive in one way, it's when you compare to what we do, it's what we spend on so many other things educationally, this could really help.
Yeah. Have you seen any other strategies being deployed or even being considered by communities that do seem to be working? Linz, I think you're going to have to mute. There you go.
There we go. Yeah. Well, I think 2 or 3 things. I think there's some places also talking about using teachers in the summer. Like I said, we were using college students. There's some models that are bringing teachers back into school during the summer. I think what you're going to see is a lot of experimentation about how we catch up, that I think is a good thing. And I think my message to you and the business community, and so many who care about things in have been at the front of educational change, is we ought to be out there encouraging that to happen, and acknowledging that there is a deficit, particularly with our students of color and low-income students.
Yeah. Some people that are on this call, employers especially, may be thinking this is a problem that's going to be fixed by the time these kids enter on the workforce. But we also know that community colleges, which I know you believe is central to really our economic future, Their enrollment has dropped significantly. Pellissippi State, Rome State, both locally, 13% drop. Don't expect any recovery. Kind of talk about how this ties in to the overall pipeline and what impact it could have.
Thanks. I see Marilyn Roddy on here from Pellissippi. I know there's some other community college reps on here. It's really concerning. One of Tennessee's big strategies has been that, like, let's increase access to community colleges. We did that through Tennessee Promise and through the ability for adults to go back to college as well. With this whole idea that you're going to need a lot more post-secondary education to succeed in today's world. It's not just in Tennessee, across the country, community colleges and other students and other colleges are way off. And even more concerning, the filling out the FAFSA form, the federal financial aid form that any of you have had college students know how complex and difficult. I see a lot of you shaking your heads, yeah, for how difficult that is. Applications for next year are down about, or FAFSA applications at this point are down about 16% from the prior year. So all those are leading indicators that we have a issue with community colleges, which are, I think, our primary pipeline to educational growth. So the result of all that, I think, is what this group needs to be doing is back to talking about what we were talking about before. And I guess the reason I was excited about doing that this morning with this group is I realize there's so much going on that everything in our world is turned upside down, but we really need to not lose focus on those things that have pushed our success in Tennessee so far. And one of those is making certain that our community colleges keep being that place that attracts and can produce graduates.
Okay. So before we open it up for some other questions, tell us how we can be part of the solution, both as individuals, PTA, dads, coaches, things of that, but also as decision makers in our own organizations.
Well, I think the first thing is don't ever underestimate your influence as a decision maker in your own organization, but also just as a community member. And influencing the conversation is incredibly important. And there's a lot of elected folks on here, a lot of people who are involved in government one way or the other. It really does matter, the conversation people hear. And I was talking to one, I won't disclose his name recently, but one local elected person that says, I only hear from the people who are really mad about something, and they tend to be people on one side of the issue or the other. I don't hear from people who are out there running their businesses and raising their families, but I know they're concerned. And I think being more active in the conversation really does matter. And so for me, that would be going back to the Knoxville Chamber has basically, I think, led the conversation, not just in our region, but in the state around higher standards, making certain we have an assessment, and making certain we have access to post-secondary education. And we need this group to renew that push and that conversation if we're going to continue our success.
Okay. Well, thank you, Governor, very, very much. You did speak slower than normal. Thank you. And so I'm going to open it up to my teammate, Lindsay Wilson, who's been moderating your questions. Please pop them in the box if you've got them, and she will be asking the governor.
Thanks, Amy, and thank you, Governor, again for this morning. We've got a question in the chat already, so we'll start with that one, and then if other folks want to enter those there as you answer this one. So this one is from Jim Dixon, who works for the YMCA, and he says, thank you for your support of the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA with the mentoring program for children of essential workers. How do you feel about the results of that work, and what could we do better?
Well, I spoke about this a little bit. We actually were very pleased with the results of that and are going to continue it this summer. And like I said, I think the encouraging thing is not just because of us, but that conversation is expanding around the country. I'll be surprised if you don't see the Biden administration try to do something nationally in the summer around tutoring. And I think some other organizations will pick up on that as well. We love the results, but we also realize at the end of the day, we were able to touch, maybe maybe 4,000 or 5,000 students out of all the the public K-12 students in the state. It's still just a drop in the ocean. So what we hope is it's a program we're going to continue and expand, but that other people kind of pick up and find ways to do that as well.
Sounds great. Waiting, giving everybody a couple minutes here to type them in. Here we have Clifford Brown has just submitted one. He says, do companies have an opportunity to come alongside our college students to assist with the tutoring this summer?
Yeah, it's actually a great idea, and that might be a way for us to leverage what we do in tutoring. So we hadn't actually thought about that approach, but it's a great suggestion. We're literally trying to make those plans now, and that might be another way to add to the experience to say, would your company be willing to share someone to come tutor for 10 hours a week for 7 or 8 weeks? Great suggestion. We'll put that in the mix.
You might be your first volunteer too.
There we go. So noted.
He says he's in, so you're good to go. You can drop any other questions in the chat here. It looks like we also have, I'm not sure who it is. They're on an iPhone, but it says their daughter was able to take part in the tutoring this summer. So you've got some folks familiar with that on here.
I think the one other thing that I think I left out of that is, we tried to survey, not just, we measured what students learned, but also our tutors. And encouragingly, something like 95% of the tutors said it was a good experience and they would do it again the next year or recommend it to a friend.
And Jim Dixon with the YMCA also said that they have over 10,000 senior members that could also be a potential tutor pool for you as well.
Yeah, I think the last year, one of our challenges, quite frankly, was because it was, back in the summer, we were restricted so much in terms of locations, and we're hoping that the pandemic will be to a point this summer where we won't quite be so challenged on physical places to meet. And that might allow us to do that. But Jim, and Clifford, thanks for the suggestions, and we'll see if we can add to that the ability to leverage more.
We've got another one here. They're starting to roll in now. You might get a little rapid fire. From Ebony Satterfield, and she wanted to know if there's a larger conversation that you've been a part of regarding the critical need of universal pre-K programs.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as those of you who've been around Tennessee for a while know, that's been an ongoing discussion that has had, it's been politically debated since, way back, probably the very first of the Bredesen administration. So, 15, 20 years now, we've had a discussion about pre-K. It's never gotten, I think, too far in Nashville. Some folks that aren't convinced of the results. Vanderbilt did this longitudinal study that was not real convincing on the results. And then second, I think people have said, given the dollars involved, could we invest those in another way? So I think it's probably time for that conversation to come back up about the value of pre-K. We've definitely seen some impact. One of the thoughts I've had, to be honest with you, and this is just Bill talking, okay, there's no research here, but I was so impressed with the results of tutoring. It made me, and we know that students lose a lot in the summer. Is there a model, if we can't do universal pre-K, that says that summer before a child starts kindergarten, they have the chance to come to a tutoring program for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, to give them kind of a boost toward their first year of kindergarten. That feels like a manageable program to me, and something that we could politically get done and financially get
done. Tim Thurston has dropped in a question, kind of moving a little bit further down the road into high school education. And he says he's noticed that many are discouraged at this time. And what would you recommend we do to encourage them to continue their education?
Yeah, it's just a realistic point about where we are, about how discouraged folks are. And that's not, I mean, it's not just true of our students, right? People are dealing with discouragement and, depression a lot because of just the world we're living in. We just need to acknowledge that. What I think our job is, leaders of businesses and community organizations, et cetera, is to help encourage people past that for the long run. We have a good number of students, and there might be somebody on this that can even tell us, who have just dropped out of the school system. Our enrollment in public systems across the state is down significantly. Now, some of those students are being homeschooled. Some of them have joined teaching pods. They're doing different things, but some of them have just dropped out of the system, which is really, really discouraging for all of us, because, we know the difference it makes to have a community college or college degree, but we even know how much worse the impact is if you don't finish high school. And one of my primary concerns is how many people are just dropping out of the system right now. So again, I think it's one of the important things of your role as a leader is to not back off that conversation of, we know this is a hard time, but dropping out of school is not the right answer at this point.
Marilyn Roddy from Pellissippi, you referenced earlier, she has a question here, or just a comment about the funding for short-term training for students is an issue. There's no financial support for certificates and credentials that lead to employment. And has there been any conversation around a funding pipeline for those programs?
Yeah. Of course, not being in the governor's office anymore, I'm not in the middle of as many conversations around programs like what Marilyn is talking about. I do think the whole idea of funding toward, what kind of apprenticeship type programs, things that we can offer our technical schools and community colleges is up for grabs. I do know Governor Lee's a big believer in those. I think, to be honest with you, and I think there's a couple members of the state legislature on here, the state budget has got its question marks around it too, right? Their budget has been impacted like everyone else's. And so I don't know I don't have any insight into what the priorities will be this year, but I think, Marilyn, the points you bring up are realistic. And again, to me, those are quick, fast term things we can do to provide traction for people. The reason that we push community colleges and technical schools so much is, our universities, is important they are, as much as I love them, they're a little bit more battleships. But community colleges are like speedboats. They can change directions quick to meet needs. And when they say, boy, we see a real demand for, more programmers or whatever it is, they can react to meet that.
We've got a couple of questions about tutoring. Before we go back to those, this one's a little bit related. So you were talking about policy kind of at the state level with Marilyn's questions for funding, but Betsy Henderson, who's a new school board member here in Knox County, wants to know, are there any policy organizations focused on reforms that local school boards should look at implementing?
Betsy, thanks for the question, and thanks for serving and being willing to run. And to everybody out there who's run, thanks for being willing to do that. I think the work that SCORE is doing in the state of Tennessee, because they've been doing it so long and they have a long track record of measuring results, has been very helpful. In terms of other local organizations, obviously a lot of the work that Knoxville Education Foundation is doing is really important. Rather than a reform advocacy group, they're more of a support organization, but I certainly wouldn't want to minimize the role that they're playing in Knoxville. But I think those are the two groups that come quickest to mind to your question, Betsy.
All right, this goes back a little bit to the tutoring piece, and I'm going to kind of give you a two-parter in one. Daniel Watson and Clifford also had a question. So Daniel said, outside of the tutoring programs, what do you think is the biggest opportunity for us to help close that achievement gap that's happening due to COVID? And then Clifford specifically referenced the social aspect that students are losing because of virtual learning. So they're losing that gear of social development. And what do you think we can do to help with that?
Yeah, and thanks for both are great questions. I think the social development piece that was mentioned is really important. That's one of the reasons I've said as a community we should prioritize being back in school because we know all of the impact of not being in school. And so again, with all the debates we're having about masks and what to shut here or there, I always just my answer is always what will help us to have more kids in school, in real school. That's always going to be my answer because of all the ramifications of not being in real school. So that's where I start. In terms of other things beyond tutoring, and again, some people don't like this answer, but I'm always going to say it. It's one of the things that is the most important is to continue to insist that we have a year-end assessment that measures where we are. And I know the downsides. I know it takes time out of teaching to test. I know the tests, we've had historical issues with it, but we have to know where we are. If not, we can kid ourselves. And this is public education is incredibly difficult. Go hang out with a teacher for a while and you'll see how hard this is. And so, and particularly in today's situation, I mean, we have because of health issues, we have, substitutes, we have teachers that are teaching a class and then going to act as the crossing guard and doing 10 other things because we're so short of people. But difficult times I don't think are a reason not to do the thing that we know is most important. And that is to give ourselves a physical assessment like we do with going to the doctor. And so I would continue to come back to, it's really, really important that we measure where we are this year more than ever.
Thank you. Any other final questions for the governor in the chat?
Let me say this. First of all, thank you. I mean, like I said, it's fun just to see the gallery of faces and people. Like, one of the downsides to COVID is not just that you can't be around people, but you just miss the interaction. And I see a group of folks like this who truly are committed to our city and county and region and state. And it's just it's reassuring to me, like, oh, wow, yeah, I forgot about this person or that person. So thank you. Thanks for caring enough to take 45 minutes of your morning when you have 10,000 other things you could be doing and you're tired of looking at a screen. And I really do appreciate your concern. And please, let's don't take our eye off the ball of those things that have made Tennessee successful. And we've had a history of doing that. We know that it works. The good thing about Tennessee is we know this works. We've seen it happen. So let's not let it go in these difficult times.
Thank you, Governor. We very much appreciate you taking your time out. And we will turn it over to Daniel Carter to play us off.
Well, again, thank you, Governor Haslam. We certainly do appreciate your time this morning, and you have as many things to be doing as the rest of us. And so for you to take this time out, we really appreciate your commitment to Knoxville and the chamber, but also to the students across the state of Tennessee. You've been a big help and will continue to be in that area. And I want to thank everybody again for joining us as we continue to monitor education on the state level. I hope you'll stay engaged with the chamber's effort. We appreciate your continued investment in driving regional economic prosperity and helping the chamber accomplish everything that needs to be done. So again, hope everybody has a great day and a great week and happy holiday season.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.